Now, last time in the Caldari Expanse, I've been using a Cormorant Navy, and honestly, it doesn't have to be expensive in order to work. A classic good old kite build, long range build, is more than enough to easily run the Kalevala Expanse anomalies, and honestly, it's fairly easy to do once you get used to the whole thing. Now, that kind of made me interested in the stores. I mean, the developers said that the Tech 3 destroyers are kind of planned that and they could be technically the next ships launched. So, let's take a look at the Talwar to Assault. Now, this is a ship that I personally really love. I'm a very, very big Talwar fan. In both EVE Online and in Echoes, Talwar has always been one of my go-to ships, and this Talar will be used for the Caldari Expanse today. This is a classic tanky kite long range build. Although honestly, since I'm going long range, kind of overkill, but it's better to be safe with a kind of decently tanked ship. And as for the rigs, it is built to be an active tank. Has the missile DPS rigs to increase the DPS a little bit, since it's not too bad regarding the DPS, but I'll be using the longer missiles, and they are known to have a longer cycle time. And as for the demo core, I have 16.80% extra missile torpedo damage, good old NCO core. This ship does have a bonus on damage controls, by the way, so you can also fit a damage control, very useful against Asters. But honestly, if I were to fly this thing, I would not be afraid of Asters, since this thing is scary. The Soul Destroyers are no joke. They can eat a frigate in 1 or 2 hits if properly built, and I'll be using the warhead charge implant, which is, by the way, very good. This implant became very, very good after a lot of updates. A lot of players said that the warhead charge used to underperform. Maybe it was right, maybe not, but in general, all of the implants have been quite strong, and they are still quite strong. So that's not that much difference. Although they have some of them been nerfed, most of them have been changed by now. Only the bomber tactic basic remains the same, which is kind of funny because that's one of the reasons why I'm going to be a thermal pilot now. I'm going to be leveling up my bomber tactic implant, and I'll be having 20,000 DPS, Myrmidons and Prophecies. That's just lovely, isn't it? But let's use a filament. A small expedition. We'll be going to the good old small region with this thing, and we will see how it will perform. Now, as I mentioned in previous videos, for the Caldari Expanse, I really started to prefer kite builds over close range builds. Kite builds are safer to use, and it's much more difficult to catch your ship with an Astra if you're moving fast and if you're a sniper. And if an Astra does decide to decloak on you, the Astra will be in some big trouble. Since again, the Talwar Assault has some very nasty DPS, but even more, has nasty alpha. So 1 or 2 hits and the Astra is basically potato, wrecked. So yeah. If you're an Astra and if you see the Talwar 2 Assault, just avoid it. That's what I'm going to tell you, because these things can be very scary. And the destroyers are actually in a very nice spot now. You can use them for the Caldari Expanse, which is one of the most profitable regions in the game at the moment. Despite what you probably heard being said, the Caldari Expanse is awesome. For smaller ships, it's perfect. And it could be, of course, changed a little bit. You can go there solo, you can go there with a fleet. You have content for both scenarios easily. So if you are into that, that's basically the place where you want to go. The only thing that kind of is annoying are the implants, and honestly, when you look at things from all angles, the main problem in the end would be implants, since some of them are just way too stupidly strong. Again, looking at the bomber tactic, we'll be taking a look at the bomber dragoon later in one of the next videos. That's gonna be a fun one. But personally, pretty happy with the stars. And I know I mentioned this before, but we will probably get those so-called super destroyers. And honestly, I am quite excited about those, since Tech 3 destroyers, yes please, that's going to be interesting to fly for sure. So, let's run the anomaly with the Talwar here. I will use the same tactic that I used before. Basically, my goal here is to separate the ships, focus the fastest ones first, focus the most dangerous ships first, and then slowly make my way to the other ships. Now with the warhead charge, you can pick specific damage types. In this case, I picked thermal, since the drones do have a hull on thermal, but it's not really necessary that you have an implant. I also said this in the previous videos. Implants just make this much easier, but do you really have to have an implant? Not really. You don't really need to have an implant. You can just run you can easily just run this without, or a low level implant is also more than enough. Level 10, level 15, that's also more than enough. It will give you a decent damage boost, so it will get the job done. No need to like have level 45 or 30. Level 30 is what I would say the upper ceiling. In my taste, I said this before as well, but for my taste, above even level 30 is like way too expensive. But above level 30 is just absurdly expensive, and I don't know if I will change my opinion on that. But level 30 is like the upper ceiling of what I would say is acceptable, although wouldn't really call it acceptable, but the level 30 like the upper ceiling of it being acceptable cost for a implant. Really not a big fan of how expensive everything became lately. I don't know if that's just natural progression or not, but not a fan of that. But that might just be me, or I could just be doing something wrong in the end. In any case, the alpha damage from this boat is very good, and keep in mind the drones do have some very high resistances, and in a lot of ways I'm personally not a big fan of the resistance being, I see not a big fan. The normal ships in the normal anomalies, for example, are decently balanced. You can easily run them with most ships. I did it with a Navy destroyer, which is very cheap. But the centrums are, I would say, that one thing that needs to be worked on in the Calevala Expanse, mostly because of how tanky they are ridiculously tanky in the central anomalies. Not impossible to do, not impossible levels to do. It's just if you are going to run them solo, it is quite the thing to do alone. So it will take a lot. It will take a lot of time. That's what I'm trying to say here. In a fleet, it will run quite smooth, and it will actually be very fun. One thing that I like about Kalevala, and especially about the centrums, you can assemble a little fleet, and you can actually kind of assemble multiple fleets and go here and run the anomalies. It's very profitable. You can get some very good ESC out of it. Its profitability is very high here, so you can easily just go here and run a couple of these anomalies and go back with about 300 million ESC loot, which, if you ask me, 300 million ESC for like an hour work with a destroyer frigate is really solid. Probably one of my favorite aspects of Caldari Expanse is the fact that you can do stuff quite easily here, and it's challenging, but it's fun. But I was talking about the centrums. The centrums are tanky. The elite ships are ridiculously tanky, and you really will have to spend a lot of time running them, or you need to have a fleet. And this is where the logistic frigates do come into play. Logistic frigates, a ship class that was kind of forgotten by time, really. A ship class that hasn't been used much, but you can actually be very useful with those little ships here as a logi to repair your teammates. So this is a thing that I like. Bantam to Burst to Inquisitor to Navitas, and Navitas to very interesting little ships indeed. And they're being used. I see them on the market. They're being used. They're being used. 3 is the they're remote repair frigates. You know what? I'll do something quite stupid. I'll just buy a bunch of these ships right now, and I'll fly them. Because I have ideas that I want to do, and I will definitely get these little boats and have fun with them, because why not? Inquisitor is actually the cheaper one, okay. But yeah, these little ships will definitely be very useful when it comes to...
We're under attack.
When it comes to the Kalevala Expanse. How does the Talwar run these anomalies so far? Well, I mean, you be the judge. I think I think the DPS output is fairly good so far. I don't have any complaints about the performance of the ship. It is working the way I already knew it would work. After all, it is a high tier destroyer. I still wish that we do get more Tech 2 ships from EVE Online. We did receive 4 of them. The Lancers are basically Tech 2 EVE Online dreadnoughts, and players do like them. I mean, I see Lancers being used quite often, so that's a nice thing, I guess. Lancers are being used, so it's not like they have been completely forgotten by time or something. But the Lancers are definitely there, and they're being used, so that's a nice thing, I guess. And you might be wondering, well, what is the, let's say, what is the best, like, destroyer at the moment? That's a very interesting question. What is the best destroyer? In my case, from my personal experience, I would pick the Talwar over anything. I am a bit, obviously, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to find this out, but I am a big Talwar fan. I love that little ship. And I would pick this thing, the Bifrost Talwar, over anything. I would be picking those out over anything. And if you do like missiles, then this is definitely the ship that I would recommend. The Corax is also pretty good. The Corax Assault, all pretty good ships, but in my case I just like the Talwar. It's fast, and it has everything that I need it to have. It's perfect. It's a little perfect ship for me. So I like to fly it. And regarding the Tech 3 destroyers, that's a very interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I will fly all of them, obviously. I set all of my skills to max out the destroyers. It's not going to cost too much. The skills are cheap. Everything is quite cheap regarding destroyers, and they will definitely be very useful when it comes to Kalevala Expanse and stuff like that. I'll definitely be flying them for that. But we will see how will they implement those different modes that they have. The Heckat, for example, is also pretty interesting. But it will be very fun to see how they will change the overall different modes that they have. They will have different modes, you can definitely guarantee that, and it's going to be very fun to to check those out when the time comes to do that, of course. Could even be one of the next updates, if you ask me. Does feel like that's the case. And there is obviously, like the main thing that's on my mind is what will they do when they change the ships. I'm definitely looking forward for the Ask Me Anything that's going to be launching next week, I believe. I need to double check the date. Should be next week, I think. Should definitely be the next week. I did have some of the questions that I asked, but not really sure what other question there is to be asked that I know.
We're under attack.
If there is anything that you would like me to, I mean, I think I already have all the answers though, so we will see. I'll definitely be waiting for that Ask Me Anything event. Now back to the Talwar here. Well, I'm definitely clearing this in a very similar way as I cleared it with the Enforcer, which is kind of funny. I did do a Enforcer video before this, and they are very close when it comes to clear speed, and it is kind of funny that this little Talar can. I think that the Enforcer does do a bit more alpha damage, but the overall DPS is roughly the same, I would say. Roughly the same. I have to be careful here, since I don't want to let those ships get too close to me. The good thing is the Talwar does have long range webs. It can web targets at a longer distance. And I'm definitely a fan of the ship's skill bonuses. Extra web range is always useful. And these ships have been changed. I used to actually fly a Talwar to assault in PvP, used to throw this thing at faction cruisers. It is one of those destroyers that can easily punch ships above its own level. Easily, actually, it can fight. It can fight the larger ships quite easily. And that's one of my favorite things about this, about the Talwar. It can easily punch ships above its own size, and that's pretty good. Pretty neat as well to have that. The speed is something that is working really well for the Talwar to assault. It can be faster. This is not the fastest. I also have a dual propulsion build that I like to use. But I primarily use this thing with a micro wardriff and with a damage control. Usually you need to run a passive tank on a Talwar, but for PvE you can also go with a full passive tank over here if you like. Missile range is decent. You can kite and you don't have to worry about the enemy ships getting close to you. So kiting is honestly a viable option for this thing. And you can easily pull off a long range kite built with no tank and full DPS. Works. It's one of the things that I did do that when I flew the ship and I used the ship, but I never really did that in the Kalevala Expanse, which means I will have to do it in the Kalevala Expanse, because why not? Should be quite interesting. Should definitely be quite interesting, to say the least. I mean, in the end, I think, and I really believe that you can pick whatever build that you want. I just say I prefer close range with my I prefer long range with my destroyers, and with the Talwar when it comes to the Caldari Expanse, I really do prefer a long range. It is simply much better. It is just much better for the Caldari Expanse. I mean, you can also go with a tanky build if you like, but it's not really. I mean, it's okay, I guess, if you have a tanky ship, but based on my previous tests that I've done, long range is just much easier to build for and much easier to overall control. So I will still say like a long range, and long range is the way to go. Nothing beats long range really. So I will still keep to the long range PvE build when it comes to the Kalevala Expanse. Of course, if you want to try something out, something new, you are free to do so, of course, obviously. Not saying that it's only one way to fight this ship, but from my experience, from my personal experience, I really do prefer the long range. It's much easier to just build for and much easier to play like that. And it's also, I would say, safer, since it will take a while for an Astra to slowly approach, and if there is an Astra, you will probably be much faster than the Astra. Keep in mind, the Astra is one of the slower frigates. You can easily outrun a little Astra that's trying to chase you down. So you don't really have to worry about any Astras or stuff like that. You will be killing those without much of a problem with those destroyers. I mean, as I mentioned before, these destroyers are quite scary. They are quite scary, and they have some DPS and alpha damage as well. So they are definitely frigate killers, and that's their job. That's what they are meant to do. So regarding that, I'm fairly happy with the Talwar, and in general very happy with all of the other destroyers. And well, with that being said, that would be it for today. It was a very nice little run with the Talwar. Very interesting little ship indeed. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask me down in the comments below. And well, with that being said, stay safe, fly safe, as always, I'll see you next time.